daisies, and unicorns, everybody, and we are still in the Infinity season, Season 8, and we took another week off, guys, so we're just going to keep going, so here we are.
I know.
Here we are, 888. Yeah.
It is crazy. But hopefully the content, is at a level that, we're making people laugh.
Yeah.
I'm getting arbitrary texts here and there of people that are like, yeah, right on, that worked.
Right. Heather said, you guys sounded old when you were talking about traffic, so I was like, thanks a lot.
Well, yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. Well,
there's something to complain about.
Yeah. I'm super excited for today because one of my favorite human beings, and is going to be on here in about 5 minutes. We've made arrangement. It may be the first interview we've had in 2 seasons.
I think so. We haven't had anybody
Maybe almost. We may have had this obligatory interview like for the final one of 3 seasons ago or something like that, but oh my gosh, it's been so long. But it has to do with scheduling and when we shoot, and we're lowly paid like contributors of our time and energies is like about all that's going on here.
Yep.
Buddy of mine was telling me that he's like within 50 people on his YouTube channel of monetizing.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so he'll cross the, I think it's 1,000 subscriptions. Yeah, like he said 957 or something like that. But
so is this Matt?
No. Oh. Matt's got like,
that's what I was thinking. I'm
lots
like,
of followers.
He was already.
Yeah, he's already monetized.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm like, so if we wanted to put it out, we can.
Oh, you know what? I'll do is I'll look it up here real quick while we have time on our hands.
Sure.
Time
is on my side. Yes, it is.
It is. It's so. Oh my gosh. Well, you got to live present and live every day because you don't know what tomorrow's coming. But hey, let's take our time.
We do not know what tomorrow brings. I think that's probably in a song too.
All right.
Somewhere.
I think it's Writing Quest.
Yeah. What's the content? What's the
it's a YouTube channel for people who want to write a book.
Oh, okay.
5-2.
At a certain point in time in my life, I was like, yeah, I probably should write a book, but then I didn't write a book. So, I don't know, maybe it's helpful.
Yeah, so Writing Quest is Brendan Pugh, Write Your Quest, WQ. So it's writing with 1 T, space quest, QUEST. He's got 219 videos up there, and I am going to, for Cut Daisies, subscribe. Now, we can get into our original, so build a plot grid, brainstorm, count your words, secret weapons. So he does some book writing, like tutorials on how to use different stuff. He does very well with his place cards, like on creating the different things. Like you can tell. But there's some of his stuff. 6.4 thousand views.
Yeah.
A lot in the. He's got, the ones where he did the tutorials, 3,000 views. He's getting some hours up. Usually about 150 to 180. But you know what? If you're interested in grassroots, watching something blow up, this is a great time to get on the Writing Quest bandwagon.
There we go.
You just watch it. Just subscribe, watch it blow up, and help this man make some money. If you want to, instead of watching a movie, just put his channel on and let it play all day long. So then he gets credit for how many hours are being listened to for all the videos.
It's true.
All right, we got Micah Kowbel.
Right.
I said one of my favorite human beings. I mean, I love this kid like a son.
Like a son.
He is my son. And so anyway,
It's
but
like the son I never. Wait a second.
he is the son I've had. Yes. I'm really super proud of Micah, and you know what? Yeah, because with being a father, got to be able to watch him since he was a wee little lad, and now he has his own little lad, Wesley, and
Right.
and so anyway, we're gonna work on this right now.
Yeah.
And get the technology all
up.
pulled up, and we're going to get sound worked out. So you may see a fade out right about now, and we'll introduce Micah.
Yeah.
Who do we have as our guest, Phil?
Yeah, so today, as Steve talked about just a moment ago, we have Micah Kowbel. And Micah Kowbel is going to be on, and you're going to see him on the screen here in just a moment. But as you know, it is one of Steve's favorite people, and it is his son.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's not the reason why it's also a favorite, right? I mean, it's because Micah's Micah that it's a favorite.
For sure. Absolutely. I love the way Micah's mind works.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, so this is good. So, Micah, say hello to the Cut Daisies and Unicorns audience, and they're all staring at you now.
What's happening, Cut Daisies and Unicorns, Patreons, or listeners? Yeah, what do they call them at the Masters? Patrons, right? Patrons?
Patrons. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Patrons.
Yeah.
Well, happy to be here, fellas. Appreciate you having me on, and it was a long time coming. I know when Adam, the other son in the family, was on, he was like, oh man, I hope you didn't have hard feelings about that. So Adam, finally made it on the show.
Right.
So give him a quick plug.
That's right.
He's one of our consistent listeners,
Right.
and is not bashful about sharing things he'd like to contribute.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And
Avid commenter.
right.
Here for the beers.
You did say that.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, man. So what are we going to grill Micah about today? What are you going to bring to our audience here today, Micah?
Oh man, it depends on what direction you want to go.
All right.
I got the text late night from Dad, like, "Hey, do you want to come on Cut Daisies and Unicorns?" I was like, "Wow, that's going to be a good thing to dream about tonight." Because talk about a little anxiety before bed. What do we talk about?
Well, just a couple biographical points.
Sure. Yeah.
And I'm giving you space there, Micah, so you can boil down a little bit. But, first off, although Micah is my son,
Yeah.
Micah, why don't you just give us just a little bit about who you are, what you do? And for the listener who's like, oh, yeah, I knew Steve had a son and his name was Micah, but based on, you got a full life going right now. And so tell our listeners a little bit about yourself biographically.
Yeah, so obviously your son, a brother to Michaela, friend to many.
So true.
And the insurance and investment director for a team at Northwestern Mutual. My boss, Nick Wilson, took me on about 3 years. I'd started out at Northwestern as a rep, and it wasn't a great fit. And he was like, I really like you. We got along well. He was actually my coach when I first started here, and he wanted to keep me in the business and asked me to do that. And I hit my 4-year anniversary of being at Northwestern Mutual this week, actually. So cool stuff starting year 5. I am a devout and loving partner to Brianna Alley and a father to Wesley Kowbel.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's mostly my story. I'm back in the gym playing basketball, which is great. I love that. And beat up on some Valley High School seniors yesterday. So
Sweet.
That's what I've been up to. And
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Wesley just turned 1 not long ago, right?
March 1st.
March 1st, yeah.
Just
Okay.
a little over a year. He is walking around. He'll be making his appearance tonight at the iCubs game, first baseball game. So that's exciting. And yeah, they grow up so fast. They make the gray come out. It's all, the things that they tell you become very, very true. And it's, ironic when you are like, oh, savor the time. And you're like, why? He's crying and pooping like every 20 minutes. I wanted him to be older and running around. Now I'm like, will you just take a nap and like chill out, sit down for a second? But he's great. That's one of the things that I know that we were going to talk about today is just the being a dad aspect and how beautifully terrifying it is. And from a dad to a son to his grandson, I mean, you get to see him semi-frequently, and so all the changes, like every time that you guys see him, it's like, holy cow, he's springing up and new skills are acquired and unlocked. And
yeah. And he's moving into that part, and I had told Micah that, I'm cool with babies being babies.
That's what they do. Baby's gonna baby.
Yeah, baby's gonna baby, and don't put baby in a corner. But I said once Micah and Michaela started talking, and there could be that verbal interface, then that was a lot of fun. And my mom, Grandma Kowbel, Marilyn to most. Now great Grandma Kowbel, which is, cool to have on the list.
You call her Gigi?
we should.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
Yeah. But she said, she's like, Steve, her advice to me was just enjoy every stage because everyone is great. And man, I looking back, and now this is a new stage, and it's kind of like looking, if you set two mirrors up like opposed to each other and you get that infinity mirror going on. I feel like there's a generational infinity taking place right now, because like even watching Wesley, I feel like I'm watching Micah, and like back in the day, how many ever decades ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Coming up on 3.
It is.
Crazy.
It is.
Yeah.
Turning that corner real quick.
Yeah.
We
I
do
had somebody really date me at the gym yesterday. He was like, how old are you? Like 30? I'm like, dang, dude, I got 3 years before that happens. But the gray's really coming out now. And you used to, want to look older, and now you get to that equilibrium of you want to start looking younger again. Well, I just shave my face and go back to 18 again. But
right. That's what I always think about with, I'm like, the beard definitely ages people. And so that's what I'm like, well, yeah, like if I shaved it, I would definitely look younger, but I'm always like, there's also people in the neighborhood that wouldn't recognize me anymore. So
it's true.
So
yeah.
when was the last time that you saw your chin?
Oh, wow. It's probably been, because I've had some kind of facial hair for probably, I think I might have shaved it off when I was 22, when I was doing interviews for police departments.
Yeah.
But yeah, after that, I just continued to still grow, whether it was a goatee or something. But yeah, so it's probably been almost 25 years.
Wow. The saddleback goatee.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Rick Warren. Everybody living in defiance against the corporate church, and they're like, well, if Rick Warren can wear a goatee, we're gonna wear a goatee.
Right.
Yeah.
But
hey, Micah, what you mentioned being a dad. I know that we have at least one father who has children in the same bracket as Wesley. And he actually pushed us. He's like, I need to hear what it's like from you guys to be in some of our episodes were influenced by him asking for how did you navigate, the young years with kids, and what's it like being a dad, further down the road. And I really appreciated his interest in that. But from your perspective, what when you talked about this beautiful being terrorized, or what were the words you used? You smithed that really well.
Yeah, it's beautifully terrific and beautifully terrifying.
Yes.
In the sense that it is nothing that you could ever imagine when it happens and you're watching, half of your genes grow. And I think when you had, talked about seeing me in Wesley, and a lot of people say that and say that they see a lot of Bree in him as well, which is great. That's the way that you'd want it to be. But there's also the scariness of the world that we brought him into that he didn't necessarily ask for, but it's his reality. And it's a lot different than when we were growing up, and certainly more different than when you guys were growing up. He's 1 year old and he can grab my iPhone, and regardless of if I have a password on it, he finds a way in. I don't know how.
Right.
Opening the camera, hitting apps, pushing buttons. He's a year old and he's already getting into there. So technology is a very scary thing, I think.
Yeah.
You can talk about where we're at with climate or policy, or just everything that's going on with gender identity. Like all of those are very new to me too, even as a young guy. And so it's a lot of things that I have to constantly educate myself on. And yet he's a year old, so I'm not too deep into that yet, but it's still something that you hear about a lot, and it's becoming more and more of a topic of conversation that's getting brought up at these school board meetings, and now into Iowa state legislation talking about using the bathroom that you were assigned, of the gender that you were assigned at birth, and how that's creating some issues for people in the LGBT community not feeling safe.
Sure.
And so where does that all lead? And so it is terrifying, but at the same time, it's like the most beautiful thing could happen is making life and seeing this happen and grow. And to think that he just used to be a little speck in Bree's belly, and now he's running around smashing graham crackers on the floor and doing all that is great. But yeah, it's this weird complex, and it's something that's hard to put into words, but it's beautiful and it's terrifying at the same time. So
yeah.
So how are you balancing work, home life? Are you doing it good? Would you say you're in that kind of a real good balance right now, or is it you're still trying to figure it out?
Yeah, I think there's always going to be a constant evolution and trying to learn how to improve it. I think initially the first 2 or 3 months are such a blur, and you're just trying to survive and take advantage of mom's maternity leave. And if hopefully everybody gets that. I know it's not the case for all, but I didn't get very much time to be off from work initially when he was born. And then for the listeners out there, we had another strange situation where 2 days after Wesley was born, our house got hit by a tornado. So that was not exactly ideal, but we were all safe, and that's what, we are just happy that there was other people that did lose their lives, and we were not in that boat. So we're just really, really fortunate for how everything shook out there. So to be in that situation where it's like, okay, we have a newborn baby, our house got hit by a tornado, it literally felt like everything was crashing down on us. When you look back at it, it's like, okay, well, we made it through that. We can survive hand, foot, and mouth when it breaks out and things like that. But from a balance perspective, I'm also in a really unique position where Brianna's a nurse, and shout out to all the nurses out there. They deserve to get paid a lot more and, are doing the Lord's work, but she is working 3 days a week and 12-hour shifts. And I know that's really a long haul for her. But on those days, that's when I get a lot of quality time with Wesley. I pick him up from daycare, and we get our father-son time and get to hang out, and then do the routine of dinner and play and bath and bedtime. And something that really helped Brianna and I early on too is just establishing, like, hey, Bree's more of the morning person, so she's going to do the morning stuff, but I'm more of a night person. And so in your first, I don't know, call it 6 months, when somebody's staying up with a baby until 1 and 3 o'clock to do those feedings, and then you put them down for those 2 hours, and mom's waking up at 5 or 5:30 to do the morning stuff, and then you just come together and try and share the load. And I think it's really important to remember that it's not the mother's responsibility to raise the child on her own.
Yeah.
That you need to share that. And I think a lot of people will experience resentment when one person feels like they're doing more than the other. And so you just need to be really open about, hey, what do you need help? Do you need to take a shower? Like, can I give you 5 minutes to go to the bathroom? Like, how can you help in that situation? And from that part of open dialogue with your partner about, hey, what do you need? What can I do to make your life easy? Do you need to go out and get dinner with your friends and, like, just get away from the house? Because even the week that I had off, I was getting stir crazy. So being off for 12 weeks, stuck at home with a crying baby, where you're constantly, like, nurturing another human being and not being able to take care of yourself, it's really, really important to make time to just get your mind right, get out of the house, get some fresh air, get some sunlight, and just be good to yourself. And then that's going to help you be good to your child. And you really can't take care of somebody else if you're not taking care of yourself. So that would be my advice to any young parents, is just really do your best to work as a team in handling those things, and don't push it off on one another, and take care of it together. Like, now we're at the point where we have to wrestle Wesley to put diapers on. And so it's like, hey, can you hold his arms while I get this diaper on? Because he will just hit the roll and he's sprinting off.
Naked with a dirty bum.
Naked, yeah, exactly. We don't need those skid marks on our carpet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a question. So my question then, because I have a little bit of insight, but I think it'll help other parents out there and other partners, is talk to us about how much you two talk. And, like, the conversations in your job, you have been trained to be able to have tough conversations. But whenever I think of Bree, she's not silent, meaning that she can't talk. She is this powerful presence of not necessarily talking. Like, Bree carries on a conversation great. Fantastic conversationalist. But that's not her inclination to lead with words. And yet you are a people person. And, like you said, friends of many, your ability to walk up to a stranger and start a conversation, it might be genetic. But still,
I wonder who I get that from.
Right. But still, there's also the part where you ask interesting questions and things, but take it to the personal, relational part of conversations of you working through how you reach that balance and the things that, really have become family values to you as parents.
Yeah, it's not easy. And I think you make a really great point. So we are two different personality types, where she is a lot more introspective, and it's easy for me to talk wet paint dry, and I could just do it all day. And sometimes that's not always a great thing, because I end up saying things that I shouldn't have or that I regret. And so that's been a big part of practice for me, is be very intentional with your words. And, you hear it so much when you're a kid, is like, once it's out, you can't take it back. Mm-hmm. But you really don't realize that until you've said something that you really wish you could take back.
Yeah.
And taking 5 seconds to pause and just think about your response, like genuinely think about how is the words that are coming out of my mouth going to be received by the person that I'm talking to right now is really important. And sometimes Brie will be like, "Hello, did you hear me?" Like when we're having these conversations, because I'm just taking the time to process. But it's like, hey, I want to give you a genuine response. And for her, it's been a learning curve because communication's always been a really important thing to her, and I haven't always been that. And so it's not, yeah, I'm like naturally I can have these conversations, but being a good conversationalist and being a good communicator is two different things. So like her ability to be concise, to your point, she doesn't need a lot of words, but she can be very powerful with space in those words. Uh, but it's constantly something that we're working on too, because it's one of those things that'll never be perfect, but it's being intentional, being thoughtful, and saying like I'm committed to us being on the same page. And where you get in these arguments, from my experience, is when you go about thinking for that person and not asking them for their opinion, and saying, hey, I did XYZ. It's like, well, hey, I would have preferred if you did it ZYX. And you guys are on completely separate pages, but that's when you just really, over communication is never a bad thing. That's something that my boss and I talk about all the time. It's a constant point of, we want to make sure with our clients that we're telling them everything every step of the way, that we're being very intentional, that we want them to be well informed. And so I've taken that into my personal life and my relationships with Bree and with a lot of my friends too, that now we're older and it's harder to stay in touch. And so just being thoughtful of them. And I know, I think on the last episode you mentioned just having somebody from the Dominican reach out to you about your website, and having somebody, just thinking about you and reaching out. And I think COVID was really hard, and a lot of people lost community and the ability to communicate and feeling personable.
Agreed.
So it is always going to be a piece of work for me. I don't think that I'll ever be a perfect communicator. I don't know if anybody will, but no. For Bree and I, it's a foundation of our relationship. And if we want to continue to be happy and truly love and care about each other, that's the way that we show it to each other, is by, communicating that to one another. And it can be in all different types of forms. And Bree's a great nonverbal communicator. Yeah. She's got eyes that will tell a story, and her facial expressions, I can get a lot of read off of that. So it doesn't always have to be words, it can be actions and thoughts, and being intentional with, your presence too. Like if you're home, I really try to, when I first get home, set my phone down on the counter, be with family, not be, in the email or texting or on social media or anything like that. But yeah, it's hard in this day and age too. Phones are really addicting, and it's hard not to have that itch to reach into your pocket and grab it. So, putting things in place like, putting your phone in timeout for a couple hours, not having your phones at the dinner table, try not to be on your phone in bed, those type of things.
Yeah, that's good. I have another question.
Shoot.
So you mentioned that you got to play basketball and school some Valley seniors and stuff. And as you talk about your partner's needs, what did it do for you as you were getting back in the swing of playing basketball, and how does taking care of your own needs affect how you approach family, partnership, and all that goes into that?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's part of back to what I said about, providing the time and space for your partner to take care of themselves. I think that's a two-way street. So it's like, hey, if you want to go and get dinner with coworkers, I want you to do that. I encourage that. I love your friends. I think that you need to spend time with them more. But at the same token, I'm a person who needs to be with people. And so whether it's at work, I've always found community around basketball. I think that's, if you love hoops, it's very easy to go to a park and be like, hey, you want to play some 21 or some 3-on-3? And so it's a language that, everybody who has a ball in their hand speaks. And so for being able to have that time, when I played, it was after Wesley went to bed. So the gym's open till 11. I went there at 8:30 and was there until 10:30 and got back. And it's finding the right times, and it's making the time. And if you're like, oh, I don't have time to do that. I mean, everybody's got 45 minutes, but like, how do you spend that? Would you rather be sitting on your couch watching Netflix? Like, yeah, I love to do that too, but I need to go and exercise. Right. And so it's, I think, something that I told you about, Dad, for all the listeners, and for Phil too. Nick and I are doing this thing with Chuck Downs is a guy. He's a coach of sorts, and his program is Epic Success. But a big thing that he's teaching is having a vision and focusing on that vision. But one thing that we practice as a ritual is the power hour. So I do mine on Monday mornings, and he, recommends doing it on Saturdays or Sundays, but that's here nor there. Do it when you can, but taking an hour to, reflect on what your week looks like and plan out your calendar of, hey, this is when I'm going to spend time with my family. This is when I'm going to focus on my professional career. This is when I'm going to focus on my spiritual aspect of my life. This is when I'm going to focus on my financial part of my life, and all of these different sectors. But even if it's 10 or 15 minutes, but getting the time on the calendar and just being really intentional with your time has helped me fulfill a lot of areas in my life that I felt like were missing, like getting into the gym and getting physical again. And also being able to, get spiritual and pray and read and have devotion. And even if it's for an hour, like taking that time and just seeing it on the calendar and getting energy around that too of, hey, I'm excited to do this. I see it. I'm looking forward to that time. Like when you said, hey, got Daisies and Unicorns tomorrow at 15, I'm like, yes, I'm excited for that, because all the different parts of my life that it fills into of, filling in other people and connecting with you guys, and just having the opportunity to share my story and hopefully some insight for some other people. But balance is so important. I know I kind of tailed off there, but
no, that's good, man. That's really good. And really, because one of the topics that we touch on consistently is best practices for like human practices, the things that are good that help humans be better humans. And basically what you described to me sounds horrible if you say personal disciplines. It sounds, it absolutely sounds horrible. Yeah. But what you're describing is you started with one thing, and you're going to have a power hour. Okay. But from that one, it becomes the catalyst that sends you into having great moments throughout your week to come. And if we had a whiteboard and did it old school and be like, all right, now what personal disciplines are you going to implement into your life over the next week? And if you can do that for 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days, you're going to become a better person all the way. I mean, there's a reason. Exactly. Yeah. So I just appreciate that. And I think just 3 bullet points, and I'll let Phil recap on some things that went through his head.
Yeah.
But number one, what you're telling people is, hey, if you're in a partnership, communicate for the partnership. Number 2, you can't be taking care of everyone else if you're not taking care of yourself. And number 3, there are benefits to positive practices when you put them and implement them into your life. I think that's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well said.
Well, it was funny. We were talking about themes to be able to go over on the podcast, and so I said to Steve, I said, I'm going to throw in ChatGPT themes.
That was one of the things I had written down.
Right. So I threw it in there. He's like, what was that again? I was like, remember we talked about this. And he's like, oh, yeah. But it was funny, like some of the topics that came out of the Chat GPT was some of the stuff that you've brought up. So apparently it is whatever you want to assign Chat GPT. that AI has, it went back into our archives and pulled out some similar themes of both, kind of looking at, it brought up meditation, it brought up, self-love, right? Those practices, and I think that you brought out and highlighted some of those things for us once again. So,
here's the scary thing. I didn't go on to Chat GPT and say, hey, what should I talk about on Cut Daisies and Unicorns? But it knew I was coming to say those things. So, out of one of the prompts that my dad sent me of just things that are blowing my mind, that is one of the things that is blowing my mind currently, because it is just, it's going to change the world, and it's scary to think, but it brings a lot of opportunity too. But, currently blowing my mind that it would say that, and it was things that we spoke about. So,
have you used ChatGPT? Have you?
A little bit, not anything for
nothing.
Nothing that I haven't taken it to its full potential. Yeah. I should say that. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's already on its 4th iteration. There's, ChatGPT 4, which, and they're trying to now capitalize on it. I think they have, a membership thing, but you can still jump on for free and throw things in there. Just, and that's what I'm like. I haven't done extensive work with it, but every once in a while I'll go throw in a topic and say, hey, what do you got? And it's still crazy what they put out. It actually makes more sense than you would think. So, yeah.
It's one of those things that comes back to terrifying about being a parent. Will my child ever need to know anything?
Yeah.
I remember being a terrible speller, and somebody was like, hey, one of these days autocorrect is going to be your best friend. And sure enough it is to this day. But now it's like, will he ever need to know how to write an essay? You can just punch it in. I don't know. So
yeah. I've been listening to a lot of people talk about AI recently, and there are some people like Elon Musk who's calling for a pause on artificial intelligence, because they're saying, I don't know if we're ready for this. I don't know if we're ready for the technology that's going to flow from this. And so there's other people, tech people, that are like, yeah, we should probably kind of pause for a moment. But, I look at it and say, so what are the things that we're afraid of? And I think that you bring out one of them. Are we ever going to have to know anything? Are we going to turn into the Wall-E generation where we sit in a chair and just it takes us where we need to go and gives us food when we need to eat? And we don't, and that's the danger. It's like we know the outcome that we don't want to see. We don't want to be that. We shouldn't be that. Yeah. So we see the dangers, and I think, then it's like, so how do we manage technology well, to be able to say, all right, we know that that's not the direction, but, how can we use it well? So,
well, in the core, the 4 main cores of fear, one of them is extinction.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the baseline of, well, what happens when this technology takes over? And I've watched plenty of science fiction, to be, one of the greatest fears is, that robots will figure out that we are our own worst enemies. And so the annihilation of the human race just makes sense.
Well,
to the robot.
Yeah. It's going to fix climate change, right? So,
so.
But I think that that's also where, I know recently that's why they paused it. The one New York Times guy had a 2-hour session with an AI, and it was eventually it's trying to spell out the doom, and I'm like, but it's also taking from what's currently present, and that thought's present.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We think that eventually technology, like Terminator 2, right? Those kind of fictional stories that are going to become truth and real. We're afraid of it.
Yeah.
And so, of course, the AI is going to spit that out because it's spitting out what's already in the, kind of human conscious.
Right.
So, but yeah, All right.
All right,
We'll
so
switch topics.
AI. So AI, what else is blowing your mind?
Yeah, one of the things, did you guys hear about the document leak? The Jack Teixeira document leak that happened?
I read
No.
a brief piece about it, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if a ton of information's out about it right now, but this guy, he's 20 years old. It's an Air Force guard, I think. He had leaked classified documents in a Discord. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Discord and that app, and a lot of gamers use it to talk and stream and different things like that. But he had leaked these classified documents on Discord, and I just don't know if it's a fall guy taking a fall guy, or if it's them intentionally leaking information for misinformation. I think we're in a really interesting point of like Cold War-esque with Russia-Ukraine situation. Like, is it just a bunch of fear-mongering to get us on board with centralized banking or whatever the agenda is right now? But that's blowing my mind that a 21-year-old kid has access to classified documents and could leak it on a streaming platform that's mostly for video games.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And
Back to terrifying again. I don't want to make that the theme, but crazy.
And I don't know if there's a beautifully terrifying part about that. That's just
beautiful that they caught him.
Right.
Found out. Terrifying that it happened.
That somebody actually has that information, that they're able to do it.
And how much is it happening that hasn't been discovered? And what kind of spies do we got?
But doesn't that take us into follow the money?
Yeah.
I mean, like at some point, like if you just take a little bit and walk down that road, follow the money. To your point, Micah, in regards to whether or not this person, how does a 21-year-old have clearance? Okay. Access. Yeah. Then you go into another point of, do we really think that we're not spying?
Right.
Do we really think that there aren't spies among us? Mm-hmm. I mean, and so like all of the information that's going on, and then you move into, okay, what is the largest budget item of our government?
Defense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to like want to lead with, this is big money, it's good money, it's money, being at war is a financial machine. So then you start talking about research and development. We've talked about UFOs in the past, and we're convinced that really most UFO sightings is really our super secret technologies.
Right.
And so I let the cat out of the bag. You and I usually talk about that behind the curtain, not in front of it. And so, but then you have all the government contracts. Where's this money going? It's going to privatization for research and development, for actually manufacturing. And then we wonder why there's like an airport underneath a mountain that planes can fly out of. No, we don't wonder about that. How are they they're not going to manufacture this stuff in plain sight because there's spies among us.
Right. Well, and then the national threat that comes of other countries knowing the technology that we do have access to, and that we've been watching, and that the speeds that we can go. And I'm on board. I think that a lot of the UFOs, and I know they're renaming a lot of these things to be more, properly identifying of what's in the airspace and not just giant weather balloons from China. Yeah. But I think it's a lot of us and a lot of technology, and there's a lot of things crashing and comets, and there was one that just hit like North New York or Maine or something like that they're paying people to go and discover. And I know we have a lot of this technology already, and you can get really deep, and I don't know if we want to have this conversation today about JFK and what he was trying to let the people know and where that led to, but
Yeah, it sounds like some conspiracy stuff.
Yeah, right there.
yeah, I don't. If you want to dive into it, we can, or we can save it for a later date. But that could be a whole hour and a half in itself.
Right, exactly. Yeah. You got anything else on your hot list?
Oh, you guys watch Succession?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm actually up to date.
Oh, yeah, me too.
My goodness.
Yeah, that last episode. Yeah.
Do you guys watch it after the credits when they have the cast speak and stuff? I found that so fascinating, and no spoilers or anything, but them filming that all in one consecutive take. I mean, my goodness, that's just a really, really cool piece of art there. But that story is going to be pretty awesome. Do we have predictions for who's going to be the next leader of?
Yeah, so for me, when I'm looking at that, I think from me perspective wise, I always think like Roman's too goofy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like him too. I mean,
Yeah.
I like him. Like his personality, character wise. Right?
I think his looks fit his character.
Right.
He looks like a little rat.
Yeah.
I just wonder if he's got a tail, but
Yeah.
Roman's
and
too
he's a
goofy.
McCulkin too. So
Yeah.
So I just think, I mean, and Roman's got some weird, like background to his. I mean, I think with
his kinks.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
His kinks are a little bit odd.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think there might be, but then when you look at like Kendall, you would think would be, I mean, and he was supposed to be episode 1, he was supposed to be taking over, and you're like, well, it would be a natural fit, but then you look at over the course of his development, you're like, man, that guy's pretty broken too.
Yeah.
And so he kind of, if I look at comparisons, and it's funny, I just listened to a podcast, and they're like, they would always directly try to associate Succession with the Murdoch family, as far as but they said it's actually more closely aligned with the, what's his name now? The CBS guy, like the guy who kind of
Turner?
No.
Oh.
He's TBS and TNT.
Yeah.
Keystone, I think it was something, but he started with a bunch of movie theater chains, and then he went into CBS, and then he went into Viacom. And so he has a family that he would always insult his children. And his daughter, he elevated her to a position where I think she was running Viacom, and he was still running CBS, almost as a figurehead, even into his 90s. And then he put Les Moonves, which, he was pretty well known in So it more closely aligns with that. But to me, Kendall, kind of his character reminds me more of like, what's his name, Donald Trump Jr. Like kind of a cokehead, like, so that aspect, I think that you're like, okay, so maybe you could see Shiv being like more of a position where she would come in, but that's kind of just my perspective of
Redstone.
Oh, Redstone, that's what it is.
Redstone family.
Yeah, right. So if you want to deep dive into that, that's a whole messed up family situation over there, Redstone. That's what it is.
How about you, Micah? Who do you think is gonna? Do you got any predictors and disclaimer? How much have you read up on Reddit and all the other different things about what you think?
I haven't hit the forums on it.
Okay.
Really just all personal opinion on this. A couple thoughts. I don't know if it stays in the Roy family. I think it might be an outside party. But I like Tom's character arc right now. I like that he, comes from, kind of being this submissive husband into like, hey, I've got a real shot at this. And the tease for the next episode kind of has him throwing his hat into the party. So we'll see where it goes from him. I also think that with Tom, maybe I shouldn't say that. What he said to Greg on the plane when they had that phone call about, hey, Greg, I need you to do me a favor. Maybe he had something to do with what happened. No spoilers, but hopefully I was vague enough that didn't ruin it for anybody who was not up to speed. So I don't know. I'm really interested in Tom. I've also heard rumors of Tom and Greg's spinoff at some point. I would really enjoy that. I think they have a funny dynamic. But I don't know. I think it's either an outside party or it's Tom that ends up being it. What about you, Dad? What do you think?
Huh. Yeah, that's an
So
interesting.
what's the girl's name?
The Shiv or
Shiv.
Siobhan.
Yeah, Shiv. So, and you know
Which
what?
is also an instrument of, from prison. A shiv is
Yes.
Yeah, right.
what you shank people with.
Yeah, you get
Some
shanked with a shiv.
foreshadowing.
There may not be any short-sightedness in that observation.
Right.
You know what? I'll just put on the podcast spoiler alerts and whatever. We'll just talk openly about this.
Right.
For me, and correct me if I got my storyline wrong, but Old Man Roy had it teed up to be able to sell the conglomerate, but keep a small thing that he was going to basically do a reboot.
Yeah.
And so based on that, the idea that an outside group would come in for acquisition now just got hit with the markets, because when they held up the phone and showed, he's like, this is the value of our dad. I mean, it looked like their stock prices dropped 2/3.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's an estimate. It was definitely below half. And so now the person that they were flying to go see and to ask for more money, with stock prices that low, they're not getting more money.
No.
Mm-hmm. They might not even get a quarter of what they thought they were going to get the first time. So they lost a ton of leverage, and it's a fire sale. I mean, really.
Yeah.
Or they stay in, show solidarity, and build this thing up. But we know it's the last season, so they've only got so many episodes to do this in.
Well, most likely 10, right? I think is.
Yeah.
And that was 3, which I thought it was kind of surprising. 3 that happened, so early on in the.
Yeah.
But
it gives them 2/3 to solve for it.
right.
So I mean, it would be. Yeah, I mean, it's probably a good time if that's going to happen. I love the conspiracy idea that Greg may have actually killed Old Man, except the one part
Tom.
of. I'm sorry,
Which one?
Tom.
Yeah.
Tom. Yeah. The one thing about that is that Old Man Roy was his advocate. I mean, like,
Yeah.
and so then he's like, oh crap, so like, but.
It may have been a situation more that he had plans for that to happen because of the file that he had Greg get rid of.
Right.
But it happened on its own accord. So I don't know. I think it's interesting that they did kill him off so early, but I also think that there's maybe episode 5, 6, 7 somewhere in there. They probably do a flashback. Like, this certainly isn't the last that we've seen of Logan. Like,
right.
I think he'll make another appearance, maybe multiple, but I'll be interested to see what direction it goes. And I'm sure there's going to be a reading of the will and how all that gets split up, and a video of him, saying something. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'll be an interesting, seeing what he does with his kids at that point. Yeah, with the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How he can get the last laugh from 6 feet deep because it's coming.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
There's a part of me that, on the flip side, Roman was the only one that reached out to his dad to say happy birthday.
Yeah. But he also did it on the slide, like
Yeah, he's not telling everybody else.
Right.
I think Roman is whacked out enough to be the CEO.
Huh.
But there's a part where, I mean, I think the one that makes the most sense to be able to do it would be Shiv. But then, I don't know. Now my head just moved to cartoon characters, and I'm watching this movie as a cartoon in my head. So I'm
Right.
circling a loop that I'm just going to drop.
Yeah, and that's where, if you're looking at that, you're saying, I mean, Shiv doesn't have necessarily the experience in the business like Kendall did, right? I mean, he was working in the business for, I think ever since he
Sure.
got his education done,
Yeah.
he was working in the business. So Shiv was doing the whole political, game for a while. So I don't know. So, I mean, so there would be yes, she's then somewhat outside, coming in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think it's well written. I like the show. So
Agreed. I was going to say the same thing. I think obviously by the dialogue, the writers have us in the palm of their hands, and this is exactly what they wanted, just to everybody be confused and
Right.
have absolutely no idea. So they're doing a great job. Sad that it's the last season, but
right.
It's so true. It's so true.
yeah.
On the flip side, though, what I would say is that it's not a flip side. What I'm saying is, I wait 3 weeks and then watch 3 in a row,
Oh,
and so then that way the storyline, But I didn't know about the notes after the credits, and so I think I'm going to go back and it's like reading the footnotes in Queen's Gambit,
Yeah.
and get some insight
Yeah.
on there too.
I don't know if it was all the shows, but I know HBO has been doing that for a little while. I mean, I know with House of the Dragon, they did those too.
Yeah.
Especially with all of the kind of time jumps that the House of Dragon did. It was like then they had each character kind of walk through their piece. So yeah, so I always find those are kind of interesting when you get to see it. I know Barry's coming out, pretty soon. Did you ever watch?
I'm excited for that. Yeah, that'll be great.
You ever watch Barry?
I watched the first one.
Yeah.
In the first season.
Yeah.
And I just dropped it.
Yeah.
But
I think he's kind of a fascinating character. I mean, he's like a hitman.
I know.
He's like into acting.
I think Bill Hader's just an all-time guy. And with the notes after, when you listen to that, it is going to throw you for a loop that Siobhan's character has a British accent.
Right.
Like the first time that I heard her talking, I was like, "What?"
Yeah, that was the same thing with Yellowstone with Beth's character. She's also British. So I'm like,
but you would never guess, like, their English accents in the show are so crisp.
Right. Yeah. So do you have words of wisdom, something else that you would like to impart on the audience today?
Super cliche. I mean, just take it a day at a time. That's all you got. Be present in the present, and enjoy the people that are around you. And I know post-COVID, get uncomfortable and try and find comfort in the uncomfortable, and go and make some friends, have some coffee, create community. I think we're finally past the point where we can be scared about shaking hands or meeting up. Reconnect with friends that you may haven't talked to in 3 years. Just be intentional with your time. All of those things. If you want the insight, go back and listen to what we talked about previously. I'm sure you can find some more little nuggets from that conversation, or any previous episode of Cut Daisies and Unicorns. There's plenty of them, so go back and hit the archives. But it was fun. I definitely got to do this again. And if you guys ever need what did you call me, Dad? A culture conglomerate or something
Current
like that?
culture commentator. I can always count on you to bring me into present day, because in the AI conversation, I'm like, pull the rep key, I'm like, nope. I'm just like, I'm going to be dialed in analog, and I might die earlier because my life is so much harder. But I'm committed to, I'm not going to use AI for anything. I mean, unless some freaking AI thing can learn how to spin a pot on a wheel, but I'm sure,
it's coming.
Yeah,
Maybe.
it is.
Maybe.
Well, I mean, I'm sure the industrial age brought in, all of that stuff's been manufactured, and
they got 3D printers building hotels, and I think that's so funny because it's like the first 3D printed hotels opening. It's the same as a normal building,
right?
They just put the bricks in different. But
wanted to let you know too, Micah, before you head out, that you are on a very special episode because this is episode 8 of season 8. It's you are the double infinity guest.
Infinity.
And so, but
let's go.
We will.
And you're like the first guest in 2 seasons. So.
Two and a half easily. So I mean,
hopefully I'll start the trend of more iPhone users getting on the the guest list.
I think that's why I told Phil, I'm like, hey, I'd really like to try it with an iPhone, and see if, because it cuts out that people don't have to have the Zoom meeting scheduled and all of that different things and stuff, and we got it to work, and it worked flawlessly, and so I think we might be onto something then. With people doing that, they don't have to be at home or in a different, like it can.
Right.
I mean, we could have
in the car driving.
Yeah. Well,
preferably not. But you could be.
Yes, you could be. That's the thing.
In theory, yeah. So
you
anyway,
could be anywhere.
But yeah, we really appreciate that, and I know people would enjoy hearing some other voices too. And then what we're going to throw a little commentary post Micah.
Right.
And round up the episode. But yeah, we got a good hour and 10 in here, and I mean, part of that was our setup, so we got probably another 15 minutes, 20 minutes to go, and and then
chop out what you want. I probably won't listen to myself, but I'll come back, and I can't imagine you having to edit this. That would be so hard to. Hearing myself speak is just terrible.
It
Nails
does
on a
get
chalkboard,
tough.
but.
And you know what? I mean, the cool thing is with here I say with technology, is I mean, I don't have to listen to the whole thing to edit, and we do basically create peaks of knowing, like I'll know when to be able to jump in and do a fade out and fade in and all that, and it'll probably take me, I don't know, 15 minutes. It takes longer for the whole thing to render, but anyway,
Sure.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, Mike, we appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Tell Bree I said hi, and give Wesley a big old smooch. And, so good to have you on, man.
Yeah, and we have all kinds of topics, especially like this JFK conspiracy thing. Yeah, so...
Get me back on whenever. Right. Just shoot me a text the night before. If that's enough leeway. So.
All right,
guys. Well, hey, appreciate you having me, and good rest of the episode to you.
All right, take care.
All right, take care, Micah. And now we're back, and so you have a little bit of a pause, but it was a great interview. We're glad to have Micah with us here today, and we just a lot of good topics, I think, especially if we're hitting some of the parenting aspect. I mean, we've brought it up before, but to bring in a voice that actually, it's like in it, like we talk about it reflecting back.
Yeah.
He's in it, right? I mean, in the balance and
knee deep.
Right. I mean, the topics, of, balance. How are you taking care of this? How are you still trying to be a good partner as well?
Yeah.
And, so hopefully, those people who are in the mix and in that part of your life, you're hopefully learn a lot from Micah as well. So.
Yeah, he said, late last night, it was 8:30. Your perspective, but
right.
I did, in knowing, headed to bed shortly thereafter, and I think by 11 or so, because getting up in the morning. Had to happen.
It does.
I know.
Because if you don't,
then
you're still in bed.
And you know what? Yesterday, I mean, I was up at 4:45 to do a fire.
Yeah, that was a long day.
And so, like, by 11 o'clock, I'm 18 hours in. That's not, but man.
It's not a short day.
No, it's not a short day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what any new information that you learned? I mean, it was always fun to bring up, some current events like shows that are happening right now. And of course, if you're listening to this in like a year later, you're like, oh, I already know what happened. Like,
yeah.
So cool. That's the time jump thing.
Well, I think that's one of the, to mansplain it, is, just one of the things that I really can appreciate about our podcast is that, people know that there's room to talk about just current life culture, the things that they enjoy, and enjoyment is a part of life, and so that is one thing that has turned the corner, and I'll speak studio speak only because it's the life that I'm living right now, okay? And that is, when I was in a hurry to try to get a bunch of stuff glazed, it was maddening because I felt like I couldn't get things done fast enough. But when I just took a moment and said, I'm going to quiet myself and enjoy this process, my efficiency is through the roof in comparison. And I think life is very similar. Like if you're rushing through things, have you ever been in a rush but felt like your day felt so long? Mm-hmm. Versus what happens if you just take a breath, embrace, and move into the motion of I'm going to do this with love and enjoyment.
Yeah.
And then how fast does time fly? I talk about a long day yesterday, but I had a blast.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was work. But, I mean, still on the other, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, I mean, so I think sometimes internally our expectations can dictate our emotional quotient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was thinking during the topic of kind of balance, like I've always struggled with balance because it's always like, things might be working well in one category, and you put kind of your time and energy into that one category, whether it's family, right? And then you throw yourself into that, but then something's out of balance with work. Or, so there's so many things that, I mean, it's always a good reminder about trying to be able to keep things better in balance and to be able to say, hey, learning from somebody else, even though, their season in life looks different than mine. But like going back to and being reminded of balance and saying, hey, so what are the buckets? You get friendship, you get family, you get work, there's all of these different things. How do you continue to try to check in on people? How do you continue to do, family stuff with also not neglecting work? So,
yeah.
I mean, and there's lots of buckets. So how are you trying to keep it, balanced and even and that's been a struggle for me for, probably my whole working career. It's like doing this well, then not doing that well. And
yeah.
So,
well, when your work is humanitarian, sometimes the cause and the sacredness of the cause to your own heart can lead to an imbalance where you feel like you're doing, it's a high cause, and then that's where the readjustment then moves into is, how are these other things and these other people, what's the reevaluation of sacredness there, and so I think you do, and when you talk about balance, like I'll hit over 40 hours this week in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's been 3 years since our home has had me working a 40-hour work week.
Yeah.
And so then there's trades, but it's you just have to learn on navigating the balance.
Right.
And so on the flip side, I don't have dependents living with me.
Right.
In the responsibility of that. There's a different direction too. So, but gosh, I just really enjoyed that conversation. I'm going to say it this way. I love talking to that man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I really, really do enjoy how his mind works. It's a good challenge for me to listen to him and to see how he's processing. And I mean, how cool is it? And quite frankly, when we do talk to other people, or whether it's in daily life or on the podcast, that is the intriguing part to me, is like seeing I wonder how this person ticks. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the part I enjoy about being around other people.
Right.
Then there's a part where isolation and loneliness feels good too.
Sometimes. Yeah, depending on what you're trying to actually, accomplish.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're accomplishing, as we, heard also, is like community. If you're building community, then isolation's not the goal. You're going to have a hard time building community in isolation.
Yeah. That was something that was a revelation to me when I went to Dominican Republic, and and really it's the catalyst that moves me into, I've been thinking about it the last couple of weeks, and here's the thing, I have to prioritize, because really the most important thing for me right now is to launch the studio. Mm-hmm. And so with doing that, but I know, man, I really identified with Micah when he said that he finds community around basketball. Mm-hmm. And he talked about playing basketball as a language. And I, in my head, just really reverted that to music, and how music moves me, and how, just being able to be a part of music and playing. And as much as I like to play solo, there's another part about playing in a band that I have learned that language. And viscerally, I feel when we are talking with our instruments and fitting, and it's okay when it's wrong, but man, when it's right, it's just like something that really. And so the idea of, and I've broken it down. Right now I'm into, okay, if you could only sing 3 songs, quote from Johnny Cash, Walk the Line. If you only had one song, but I want to pick out 3 songs that are meaningful, and then I want to go to the next level and see if I can. I'm not a good memorizer, but see if I can play those and get them to where I can go to some open mics. Because I know at the open mics, I'll meet people.
Yeah.
And people with common interest, which is music first before vocal and an instrument.
Yeah.
But I think, So anyway, I
think that'll be good.
But I really, as Micah said, he probably wouldn't listen to himself, but I think that's one thing that preachers just have to get used to, right? I mean, you gotta listen to those things.
You eventually do.
Yeah.
No, and it's a good practice too.
It is.
Because then you also hear the thing, you're like, oh, yeah, I would change that. And then that's how you sharpen it.
Yeah, and also, working through the fill words, like,
Right.
oh,
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Yeah.
That's true. Fillers.
And then it's a muscle. I mean, so you exercise the ability not to do that and to be thinking ahead of your words.
Yep.
Well, hey, everyone. Hopefully that was a breath of fresh air. You got to hear somebody else's voice other than ours. And, yeah, didn't do that craft very well right there.
Yeah. It's all good. It's all good in the hood.
Right on.
Yeah, so hopefully you enjoyed that, bringing that in. I think it's also a good reminder for us, like, hey, sometimes we want to bring in a third voice that also has a different perspective on life, even in different seasons. And so, we're, hopefully then say, all right, who else can we bring? I mean, I know Adam's probably out there listening right now. Adam wants to jump on. He wants to get on. So
Ponzi schemes. He's fascinated by Ponzi schemes and having done some research, and so we'll wait a few weeks. Maybe we'll sneak somebody else in there. But I think our technology breakthrough in that we don't have to have people tied to their desk or their laptops and stuff like that, I think. But we are saying if you have an Android, you don't get to be a guest. Elitism.
Super judgy right now. We're being
only because we can't. Well, but you know what we could do?
Yeah.
We could WhatsApp. Video call on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
That would work for all of that.
Sure.
But
if we have to.
All right. Well, this is Friday, and we've got a trailer to record, and then production to produce. So I'm going to bid you adieu.
Yeah. Take care, everybody.
The French version of goodbye.
Peace.